Welcome to Global View. Join us on this multi-visual journey around the world.
Let's bring in Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Welcome back, Dr. Fauci. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So what can you tell us right now about how long you expect many parts of the Chinese economy, business, people quarantined to be shut down?
You know, it's very difficult to tell because what the Chinese have done is something that really is unprecedented. The degree with which they have shut down travel through major cities encompassing about 50 million people, including the entire 11 million person city of Wuhan, a big industrial hub, is really unprecedented. Their decision to do that was their desire to make sure that the virus does not spread further throughout China, but also outside of China into other countries. It might actually work, as unusual as such a move is to stop an outbreak. It looks like it might be slowing things down, but we don't know. They're saying that there are less new infections in the last couple of days, but I think we need to give it a few more days to determine if that's real or that's just the variability that you generally see.
Given, as you said, that it's such an unusual move that they took to try and contain the virus, if you did see a mini outbreak, hopefully we will not, but if you did see a mini outbreak here in the US, would it be harder to contain or now easier given that we're on top of things, aware of what the disease is and how it spread?
Well, it really depends on how the virus is introduced. For example, the 15 cases that we had, 13 of them are travel related and 2 are spouses of the travelers. We immediately identified them, isolated them, and did contact tracing. You get into trouble if people enter the country sort of under the radar screen who are infected, and then you get secondary and tertiary multiple rounds of transmission. If that happens, it might be a little bit difficult to really get your arms around right away. If you know that they're there and you can trace them and do contact tracing, we may be able to keep it contained. So it really is a kind of something in flux that there's no guarantee whether or not we're going to be able to do it. Hopefully we will be able to effectively contain it.
Do you disagree with the repatriation of the U.S. citizens from that cruise ship, or do you think it was absolutely fair to get them off that petri dish, as it were, of potential infection?
Well, 2 things. One, I absolutely agree with it because I was a part of the decision. So I think it was a very good idea to get them out of there, get them here. If they need medical care, we're giving it to them in the University of Nebraska, which is uniquely equipped to take care of them. And for those who require quarantine, we'll provide quarantine.
What else have you learned, Dr. Fauci, about how it is transmitted from person to person? Is it really transmitted asymptomatically? And how contagious is this actually as we try to process what the global human toll is going to be?
Well, it certainly is quite transmissible. It's easy to transmit. That's been well established by what's going on in China. We know that a substantial number of people have asymptomatic infection. They're infected, but they don't have any symptoms. Whether or not you can effectively or efficiently transmit to someone else when you are without symptoms is still up in the air. There are some anecdotal reports that indicate that asymptomatic transmission can indeed occur. It is likely not a major driver of the outbreak.
Cotton, a member of the Intelligence Committee. Senator, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, Martha.
Good evening. So what really caught everyone's attention was when you said, we also know that just a few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that researches human infectious diseases. So what were you suggesting by saying that that laboratory is only 4 miles from the market? What did you mean?
Martha, I'm suggesting that we need to be open to all possibilities and we need to demand that China open up and be transparent so a team of international experts can figure out exactly where this virus originated. We know it didn't originate in the Wuhan food market based on the study of Chinese scientists published in The Lancet, a respected international science journal. Now, I'm not saying where it started. I don't know. One reason we don't know is because the Chinese Communist Party won't open up to international experts. That's what they need to do so we can get to the bottom of where this virus originated and hopefully get an effective diagnostic test and vaccine for it.
So you have, other different professors, one of them of chemical biology at Rutgers, saying that there's nothing in the genome sequence of this virus that indicates that it was engineered. And then you have, critics, Chris Cillizza, for one, at CNN, saying that it was the height of irresponsibility from a public official to make the contention that you made. What do you say to them?
Well, let's take the Rutgers professor, Richard Ebright. He was the main expert in the Washington Post story you cited earlier. Yeah. Well, in fact, today he was cited in the Asia Times saying that it is quite possible that it was a laboratory incident. Again, that's not saying that this was a bioweapon, but we do know they were investigating and researching coronaviruses in that laboratory. It could have been an accidental breach. It could have been a worker that was infected. My point, Martha, is that we don't know, and until we get all the evidence from the Chinese Communist Party, it is only responsible, not irresponsible, to keep an open mind about all hypotheses.
So it's interesting that today the State Department announced that 5 Chinese media outlets will now not be considered media outlets, but foreign missions. We're going to put the names of those up on the screen for you. What does that tell you? And it does go to the point that you're making, that the information that we're getting is very difficult to verify.
Well, it tells you that the Chinese Communist Party, just like any communist party, has a widespread propaganda effort. And regrettably, the Washington Post and New York Times, 2 of the outlets that you cited earlier, have taken millions and millions of dollars from something called China Daily to run so-called inserts that purport to be news, but in reality are Chinese propaganda. They ought not be doing that.
And that is one of the named entities, right? China Daily Distribution Corporation?
China Daily has spent tens of millions of dollars putting what appear to be news inserts into the Washington Post and the New York Times, yet they are paid propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you assume that those contracts would end, that we would no longer see those inserts now that the State Department has declared these media outlets to be foreign missions and not reporting outlets?
Yeah. I would certainly hope so, Martha. And in fact, I wrote to the Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr just a few weeks ago asking them to examine these inserts and whether or not they ought to be registered under the Foreign Agent Registration Act.
Good idea. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight, sir.
As the virus spreads to more and more countries, the CDC expands travel alerts. And Meg Terrell has more on that tonight. Meg?
Well, hi, Tyler. These new travel advisors coming yesterday from the CDC for Japan and Hong Kong. The health agency designating them both Watch Level 1. Now, that's not a recommendation to limit travel, just to be aware of reports the novel coronavirus is spreading in those places. Additionally, the CDC added notifications about the coronavirus for Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand. None, of course, as high as for mainland China, a warning of Level 3 to avoid non-essential travel. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb told me today outbreaks in neighbors of mainland China, particularly Japan, South Korea, and Hong Kong, are, quote, the new front lines for this disease. Public health experts are watching these areas closely as case counts rise. In South Korea, numbers more than doubled today. Meanwhile, Iran now confirming 5 cases and 2 deaths, prompting the country to close schools and impose emergency measures near its capital. Joining us now is Helen Branswell, senior writer at Stat News, who covers infectious diseases and public health, and Dr. Ali Khan, Dean of the College of Public Health at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Welcome to you both tonight. Dr. Khan, I'd like to start with you. Just looking at those neighbors of mainland China and the increasing numbers of cases we are seeing there, what does that tell you about the trajectory of COVID-19?
I think what we're seeing is the world has a front row seat to how public health works and how they're dealing with the novel and unpredictable virus. Fortunately, of the countries that you just mentioned, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, they have excellent public health systems. And we're seeing how they're sort of layering multiple public health measures. Currently, a lot around about finding people who are infected, finding their contacts, doing targeted quarantine of those contacts. So we're fortunate that they have excellent public health systems to try to deal with the threat within their country.
Well, Helen, I want to ask you also about the methodology of counting cases in China. We have now seen it change multiple times. You wrote a great piece today about the confusion over the case count. And of course, you've been tracking this graphically. So we saw a huge spike last week with one change, another massive drop this week with another change. You've been covering infectious diseases for almost 2 decades. Have you seen anything like this before, and what does it tell you?
Well, it tells us it's a very confusing situation. I mean, the case definition, the way they are deciding whether someone is a case or not, has changed multiple times in this outbreak. In fact, I think it's up to 6 now. And that's normal. You need to be able to amend your case definition to, as you learn more about a new disease. But last week, as you mentioned, they decided to include people who hadn't tested positive, but who had had a CT scan that showed pneumonia and had symptoms of the disease in Hubei province only. And then there was a 15,000 case jump in one single day. Yesterday, they said they're revising that, and they knocked a bunch of cases off the case count and reported 340 or 94 cases yesterday. I guess 411 today. It's almost it gives you almost whiplash. It's unusual to see cases react so quickly like this, and it makes people wonder what's actually going on.